Hello, everyone. I'm Dexter Marr, and I'll be your summer session host tonight. Thanks for participating in our 51st annual Buddhist Study Summer Session. The Buddhist Studies Center of Hawaii opened its doors in 1972, inspired by then Bishop Kanmo Umemura and led by BSC Director Reverend Tatsuo Mineto. The first summer session began 2 years later in 1973 with a 4-week course of study led by instructors Dr. Alfred Bloom and Dr. Mokusen Miyuki. Our first online summer session began during COVID in 2020, and now we offer a global reach for sharing the Dharma. This year, we welcome Reverend Dr. Enrique Galvan-Alvarez from Manchester, England, to Hawaii. He's already made presentations to our ohana in Kauai, Maui, Hawaii Island, and the Oahu District. More introductions later. First, we'll have an opening service officiated by Bishop Umatani, and the service order will be chanting of the Vandana Tisarana. You can find that on page 7 of your service book, and chanting of Jusege, found on page 55. Then we'll have a welcome message by BSC Director Reverend Blaine Higa, and finally closing with the singing of the Nembutsu. So, Bishop.
Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddha saranam gacchami, Dhamma saranam gacchami, Sangha saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namandap, snamandap, 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 snamandap. Namandap, snamandap. Thank you. Please be seated. Chanting of the Jusege on page 54. Gangon josengan ishimu jodo shinga humanzo sehu joshonga gao muryoko uidai seshu usai shobingu sehu joshonga gashi jobundo myosho chojippo kukyo misho mo sehu joshonga ryoku jinshone joe shubongyo シグム浄土一生天にし人力現代公不生無才道少女三苦名交際主役な回避遅延へ滅死根門閉塞小悪道津断伝主も高僧上満蔵いよろ実法日が主樹期天候不入一種解放像公世苦毒法上内主樹説法ししく供養一切無具足主徳法元年心情も得意三害を両無無下地津断未不詳願学へり投資最小層志願略国家大戦の感動国書天にとうち妙見ナマンダムナマンダムナマンダムナマンダムナマンダムナマンダムがんにしくのく平等聖祭道本もないしお上安楽なまんだつなまんだつなまんだつなまんだつなまんだつなまんだつなまんだつなまんだなまんだつなまんだ
Hi, good evening, everybody, and aloha. Welcome to the 51st Buddhist Studies Center Summer Session. I'm really honored and glad to welcome all of you to the center and to this opportunity to hear the Dharma, to deepen our understanding and to share in the joy of the Nembutsu together. This is a rare opportunity, right? Anytime we are able to gather, to hear the Dharma, to experience and to deepen our understanding, it's a rare and wondrous opportunity. And especially in our world today, to be able to take some time, right, out of our busy schedules, amid all the chaos of the world, to just be present, to focus, to hear the Dharma, to learn and to see how the Dharma can work in our lives, and offer wisdom and guidance for living in our troubled world. And so we are so grateful to be able to hold this annual summer session for 51 years now. What a remarkable achievement for Hawaii Kyodan, for the center. And the center really is a place of learning, a place of discovery, a place of personal growth. And we hope to transform the center, and move it into the future as a premier center for learning, for Dharma learning and sharing for Hawaii and for all of our communities here locally and across the state. And so we are immensely happy to welcome Reverend Dr. Enrique Galvan-Alvarez, a good friend of mine. We met many years ago at IBS in Berkeley. And we had a few days to spend together over the weekend in Kona when he came to visit with us on the Big Island. And we just had a great time catching up, but also really talking about the journeys of our spiritual journeys and how we share in the joy of the Nembutsu together, right? And that is this opportunity we have together tonight and this week, is to share in the joy of the Nembutsu together. And so I wish you all well, and thank you for being here, both in person and online. Mahalo for joining us for these sessions this week. So I hope you find this meaningful and enriching and really helping you on your journey as you travail through life. So again, mahalo, and thank you very much for being here.
Everybody please rise.
Sure, please join me in Gassho.
Okay, please allow us a few minutes to transition and close the altar. Now our speaker, I first met Professor Enrique when I picked him up at the Honolulu airport last Sunday night, 24 hours late due to a canceled Saturday night flight. Luckily he has lots of friends in the Bay Area and was able to lay over gracefully. On Tsunami Alert Tuesday, we were at Zippy's in Kailua having lunch at one of Dr. Bloom's favorite hangouts and having Al's beloved French fries. We had just spent the morning at the Bloom family residence introducing Professor Enrique to his mentor's family. So his Hawaii visit has been quite eventful, so far. Okay, Enrique will sure be talking more about his experiences here. In general, he encountered Tibetan Buddhism in 2003 and discovered Dr. Alfred Bloom's writings in 2011, the same year that he received his PhD in modern languages. After 2011 and encountering Dr. Bloom's writings, he began a 5-year-long correspondence with our dear Dr. Al that resulted in his Kyoshi ordination just this last January. He's a leader in European Shin Buddhism and a mentor to the 4 Tokudo aspirants from Spain, Germany, and Belgium who will be seeking ordination in October, at the same time that Ray Takaui and myself and Rod Moriyama will be with this group. So please welcome Dr. Reverend Enrique Galvan-Alvarez to our 51st Annual Buddhist Studies Center Summer Session.
Yep, okay, yeah, I can hear myself now. That's great. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's been my greatest pleasure to be invited to this seminar and to be in Hawaii for the first time. I've met many of you before, but I would first like to start by acknowledging my debt of gratitude to a lot of the people that have enabled me to be here. Actually, if I did that with everybody, it will take the whole of today. There's so many names, but of course, Bishop Umitani, thank you so much for your very kind invitation. And Reverend Blaine Higa, Director of BSC, it's been really nice to catch up again and to see you. And Dexter Ma, and Caroline Uchiyama, and Derek Inoue, thank you so much for looking after me and helping me to navigate the cancelled flights, tsunami alerts, and all the rest. It's been eventful indeed. Now, I came to Jodo Shinshu through Hawaii. So my first encounter with Jodo Shinshu was thanks to Reverend Dr. Al Bloom. However, unfortunately, we never met face to face. So we did correspond for about 5 years, and he was an absolutely key figure in my Buddhist path. But somehow the causes and conditions were not there for us to meet and for me to come to Hawaii in those years. He has passed on to the Pure Land, and yeah, 10 years later, almost 10 years later, I'm here now, and it feels like almost like I'm catching up with something that already happened 15 years ago, that encounter with, I'm going to call him Al, I think Dexter, and I have been talking about it. He always insisted in being called Al, and that feels much more natural in many ways. Right, so I'm going to introduce you a little bit to how we're going to journey through this 5 days that we are together. So if we could display the PowerPoint, that would be great. Okay, so if I press the big one? Okay, that's great. Just to give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about. So the theme of this seminar is relationship, dynamic relationship, right? What would you say is the essence of the Buddhist teaching, if I ask you? There's no wrong answer, don't worry. Gratitude, okay. Connection, okay.
To live a calmer, better life and to learn acceptance.
Okay. Gratitude and connection involve a relationship always, right? And how do we come to that acceptance, that calmer life, is something that we will be exploring, also in relation, right? So one way, perhaps a more academic, theoretical answer, if you just like, Buddhism is about 2 things, interdependence and impermanence. Everything is flowing, everything is changing constantly. And everything is happening thanks to multiple causes and conditions, right? So everything is happening in relation to something else, right? That's the core of it. So I'm using those words. So you say, oh, impermanence, interdependence. Yeah, okay, yeah, I've heard of it. Relationship, dynamic. those recur throughout these talks. So just to walk you briefly through what we're going to do in these 5 days, today I'm going to start talking about myself, my relationship to the Dharma, my relationship to the people who enable me to hear the Dharma, right? So it's always good to start with yourself. Then tomorrow we will be talking about the life of Shakyamuni Buddha as a life of encounters, as a life of relationships. On Wednesday, on the third day, we will be talking about the Namo Amida Butsu as a relationship as well. We will explore that. On day 4, we're going to be talking about how do we connect, how do we relate, how do we appreciate others in our life. And finally, on the 5th day, I'm going to be talking about ritual, and that relates more to my academic work, academic research in Jodo Shinshu, which has been focused on Jodo Shinshu ritual, but looking at ritual also as a form of connection, as a form of relationship among people, but also among countries and across time and space. But we'll get to that. We still have quite a few days, right? So every day I want to start by reminding you of this. We commence today with Bishop Umitani leading us in reciting the 3 treasures. Many of you that I've met in the satellite seminars have heard me talk about the 3 treasures. The 3 treasures are also the core of Buddhism. It's something that all Buddhist traditions have in common. And in my current understanding, the 3 treasures are about connection, are about relationship. So this is the way I am thinking about this, and this is what is going to lay the ground to the way we're going to go through these sessions. So the Buddha awakening is the dynamic process, the path by which we come to realization, always in relation to an other, right? The path, the Dharma, is the journey of realization, awakening, which is informed by many encounters with fellow walkers. It's another relationship. And relationship, the sangha, the dynamic connection that brings us to realization, awakening, and enables our journey. And you might be thinking, well, he's saying the same thing in each of these, right? And I am. And that's the point. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are in a deep relationship of interconnection. And seeing that connection between the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha is absolutely key to really understand what the Buddhist path is about. And so I invite you to walk with me in these 5 days, for the next 5 days, and to do this together, to do this in relationship. I do not intend to come here every day and lecture you about connection and relationship and dynamic while you listen to me. I really want to hear from you. I really want to talk to you. My style of teaching is always prompted by what people are interested in. What are people's worries? What are people's concerns? So, yeah, when I'm teaching in the communities where I teach, I do most of the talking, but always, or 99% of the time, prompted by something that somebody else has brought up. So these sessions are going to be a little bit improvised. It's going to be a little bit of flexibility, and I hope you are comfortable with that. There will be a break, like Dexter mentioned, roughly towards the middle of the session, but do not feel at any point that you are interrupting. If I'm in the middle of flow, I'll say, just give me a second, I'm going to finish what I'm saying, and that's fine. But always interject, always feel free to make a comment, ask a question, say what's on your mind. So if what I'm saying brings something up for you, please share it. So this is how we're going to work together, right? It's going to work how we're going to walk together. So, going back to the 3 treasures, so I wanted to start by sharing with you this 3 wasan. I love the wasan that Shinran Shonin wrote, right? And in this case, in some cases, I'm using my own translation of the wasan. In this case, I'm using CWS, right? And these are 3 that are in a sequence. So sometimes, it's good to focus on one wasan, but sometimes we need to read them in context because there's a flow to them, right? And when I've been sharing wasan, I like to read them in Nihongo, read them in Japanese, because they are poetry as well. And it's about how they sound as much as what they say. Some of you might speak Japanese, some of you might not. That's okay. Today, though, because it's already 6:30, I'm just going to focus on the translation and focus on the meaning. But we will be reading a few wasan in the next few years, in the next few days. And I like you to appreciate as well that musicality of it. How does it sound? So these are from the Jodo wasan, what's been translated in CWS as the hymns of the Pure Land. And it goes like this. It is difficult to encounter a time when a Tathagata appears in the world, and difficult to hear the teaching of the Buddhas. It is rare to hear the excellent Dharma of Bodhisattvas, even in a span of a countless kalpas. And it continues. It is difficult to meet true teachers, and difficult for them to instruct. It is difficult to hear the teaching well, and more difficult still to accept it. And so it goes. More difficult even than trusting the teachings of Shakyamuni's lifetime is the true entrusting of the universal vow. The sutra teaches that it is the most difficult of all difficulties, that nothing surpasses this difficulty. And so this is a great way to start. I mean, we always start by taking refuge in the three treasures, right? And here Shinran is taking refuge in the three treasures, but in a very particular way, by talking about how hard it is to encounter these three treasures. So when we look at what's going on, of course, it's about that relationship between Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The Sangha are the teachers, right? Sangha is not just a group of people. Sangha are our teachers. So when that wasn't about difficult to meet a true teacher, difficult for the teacher to instruct, difficult to hear, that's about Sangha, right? About that relationship. And so here, Shinran Shonin is talking about the three treasures as a relationship, as an encounter. If we look at the verbs that are being used, ao, to encounter, to meet, kiku, to hear, to listen, oshieru, to teach, to instruct, right? And shinzuru, to entrust, to accept. All of these require a relationship. Now, nobody is a teacher. I'm not a teacher. If you're not here, I wouldn't be in this room by myself talking. I mean, they probably call social services or whatever they call them over here, right? So I'm only a teacher in relation to somebody, in relation to a student. How many of you are parents? Okay. How many of you are children? Right, all of you, great. You see, so you can be both. But you, to your children, you are a parent. To your parents, you're a child. And you remain a child no matter what age you are, right? Right, so there's always this dynamic where you do have somebody's only something in relation to someone else. And that's the key of the three treasures as well. The three treasures exist for us, exist in relation to us, right? And so we're talking about how hard it is to meet, to hear, to entrust, right? To teach all these things. And I used to worry about this. I used to think like, oh, maybe I'm not getting it. Maybe I'm not meeting the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Maybe I'm missing it, right? But the interesting thing here is that when we speak in this way, right? Who says, I mean, we also read one of my favorite passages. I've been a Buddhist for 20 years now, over 20 years. And that verse, hard is it to be born as a human, is common to all Buddhist traditions. I've been hearing it for 20 odd years. Only recently I realized something very interesting about it, very meaningful. Who says, hard is it to be born as a human? Who says that? Turtles? Birds? No, humans say that, right? So you only can acknowledge how hard something is once it has already happened. So this is a way of expressing this gratitude that you talked about. Because Hard is it to encounter a Buddha? Only somebody who has encountered a Buddha can say that. Hard is it to hear the Dharma? Only somebody who has heard the Dharma can say that. Hard is it to meet a true teacher? Only somebody who has met a true teacher could say that. So, this is something very interesting. It is a way of expressing this gratitude, if you want. And in more common English, if you want, I talk about this as, what are the chances? What are the chances? Now, I'm going to tell you a bit about my story, how I came to be here today. And I'm from the Canary Islands, which is very similar to Hawaii in some ways. Like somebody from that background, how did I come to be ordained in Kyoto and like meet all these people and go on this journey? What are the chances? How hard? Arigatai koto ni. This sense of arigatai, the sense of like, how odd. What are the chances, right? So, but all of this realization, which is a kind of gratitude if you want, right? And it comes to you very naturally. It only happens after the encounter has taken place. It's always retrospective, right? You only come to recognize it afterwards. So I want to tell you a bit about my journey, but I'm aware that some of you have already heard about this, so this is just a brief sketch. And today I think I want to focus mostly on the second half, but I became a Buddhist at age 18. I started practicing in a very self-power way, what we call self-power. You all familiar with the term Jiriki, self-power? Yeah? Okay. There were hints of other power, always there. And then around age 25, 26, I came to an impasse in the Tibetan Buddhist practice I was doing. And in 2011, I met Reverend Dr. Bloom online. We started corresponding. 2011, end of 2011, beginning of 2012. He directed me to many other people, to many other good teachers and friends who guided me. And eventually, I ended up receiving Tokudo ordination in 2019, shortly before the COVID pandemic. And so everything went online. So I started sharing the Dharma online in Spanish and in English. And finally, this year I received, early this year, Kyoshi certification. So, how all of that happened? What are the chances? Right? There's a pattern to this journey. There's a very clear pattern to this journey, right? So, first of all, I encounter an unexpected other. Something from the outside comes and derails me. That's how most things happen in my life. I don't know about yours, but I'd love to hear about them. And my initial reaction is, no. I don't want to be derailed. I have a plan. I know how my life is supposed to go, and it's not like this. Right? So there's this initial resistance, this rejection. However, through that encounter that derails me, I come to a new understanding of myself. Those encounters show me something about myself I hadn't considered before. And then I'm very grateful for that. I feel very happy, very committed to that new encounter, and my life is happily, successfully derailed. Great. Great. So, this is how I first came to Buddhism in the first place. So, as a teenager, I became interested in religion. I was loosely, vaguely, culturally Catholic in a way, but also Canary Islands, they have a very rich hybrid culture, because we are the product of many different peoples, European and African. And so Catholicism is not in the European form. It's mixed with a lot of local customs, local gods and goddesses, disguised as saints and Virgin Marys and all these things, right? And so, yeah, that was my background, but I wasn't particularly committed. And so I thought, well, I'm supposed to be a Christian, so I read the Bible. But somehow that reading didn't really speak to me. So I thought, what's the next thing I could read? Well, I read the Quran. And so I read it. But also didn't seem to resonate quite with me. And so I thought, like, well, what about Buddhism, right? And so I opened a book, like the first thing I found about Buddhism was the Four Noble Truths. And it's an interesting story as well. We could talk about it later. Because my grandfather had books about Buddhism. He wasn't a Buddhist, of course. But I never met him. But I first learned about Buddhism through the books that he had at home. He had died a few years before I was born. And I carry his name. So in a way, I feel I'm fulfilling maybe a hidden aspiration, hidden wish that he had somehow. Anyway, I open the book about Buddhism. First thing I find out is the Four Noble Truths. And the first of the Four Noble Truths is translated controversially, I would say. I wouldn't put it that way, but that's what I read. Life is suffering. And I went, nope. I'm not interested in that. I don't want that. That's very gloomy. So that was that. Okay, so I have this first encounter, and I'm not interested. But, of course, what happens? Around 18, so maybe I started this journey of searching around 15, 16, and around 18, I fell in love for the first time, as you do as a teenager. And I had my first heartbreak. And then at that point, I thought, oh, the Buddha was right. Life is suffering. That suffering, that pain of a teenage heartbreak is very powerful. It can be a gate to the Dharma. I mean, typically there are various ways in which people come into Buddhism, and a very common one is through death. I would say often the death of a parent, right? When you become an orphan, when you're alone in the world in a way. That's a big step. But it can also happen in ways like this. Now I laugh about it. Now I think, well, that was that was silly, right? There was much more suffering to come later on. So, but at that time, that's the phrase that came to mind at that point, right? So it's like, so the Buddha was right. So I'm going to pursue this path. I'm curious about this path, right? So I started, I turned to Buddhism, and the Buddhism that was mostly available around me was Tibetan Buddhism. So I started there, right? And so partly because I was very young, partly because of my background, partly because of the way the Dharma was presented to me, I really threw myself at Buddhist practice, right? So I sought out to receive a lot of teachings, a lot of empowerments. I would practice every day. I became vegetarian. And I was trying really, really hard to uproot the cause of my suffering, right? So I understood life is suffering, I'm suffering. What's the root? Is this expectation? Is this desire? Is this ignorance, right? So if only I work hard enough, I'll solve it, right? So that was my kind of thinking at the time. So I wanted to conquer the root of my pain. And so that's how I started when I was 18, 19. And so there was a kind of anxiety about receiving the Dharma. I wanted to hear from many different teachers. I wanted to hear many different teachings. There was a kind of hunger to receive something, because it was coming from a place of, I feel like I'm lacking something. I feel like I'm not okay. There is something that I miss somehow. And so even if I met good teachers, I was not really hearing. My practice was very committed, was very strenuous, was very systematic, right? But it didn't have clarity, didn't have depth. I was doing it mechanically. Because deep down there was a belief, a magical belief, that if only I repeated a technique again and again and again, the problem will solve itself magically, right? So that was the kind of the first stage. And so at this level, I believe I was caught in the bubble of what Shinran calls doubt. And so we'll explore this in the next few days. I don't think that when Shinran is talking about utagai, this gishin, this giwaku, right, is talking about doubt in the sense that we commonly use it in English or in Japanese for that matter. It's not disbelief. It's not skepticism. It is being caught in a very self-referential bubble. And in one of these, in a very self-centered bubble, and in one of the wasan, he uses this expression, which I really like, jigo jitoku. I act, I receive, right? So I mean, I reap what I sow, we say in English, right? If I do this, this happens. That's doubt. And so the person who thinks like that, jigo jitoku, right, I act, I receive, this person is the person of doubt, or the doubting heart. Says, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I was meant to be talking about this. Oh, stuck. Yeah, you got the kanji and everything, right? So gishin, giwaku, jigo, jitoku. So that was the kind of way in which I was practicing. But I can see it now. I couldn't see it at the time, of course. In fact, Shinran Shonin talks about the good person with a doubting heart, right? And this is what we would assume is a good Buddhist. He's a very committed Buddhist, right? Practices a lot, meditates a lot, right? It practices very hard, but is moved by this idea that I am in control. I can make this happen. And this is what Shinran calls doubt, right? And so the more I practice in this way, the more anxious I became, right? Because I was coming from a place of feeling like I lacked something. And so I kept on digging deeper and deeper, as it were. However, in the process of all of this, in the middle of all of this process, there were hints of other power, right? So at age 22, this happened. It was a very interesting experience when my grandmother died. So my grandmother and I had been very, very close. And she was ill. She lived a very full life. She died at an advanced age. It was all very natural, and we knew it was going to happen, right? Now, when I got the news, so we were expecting it was a matter of when. She was in her late 80s. And I remember when the day that I got the news, because I already lived in England, and I had to catch a flight, a 5-hour flight, to get to the Canary Islands to go to the wake. And our tradition is open casket. So the night that the person has passed, we all sit together with that person. It's like the old Japanese way, right? And so we all are like as if we were like hanging out with that person, saying goodbye, right? Having coffee, having food, right? And talking. Always you talk in a kind of low voice, as to not to wake up the person, kind of thing, right? And so I had a long time, I was very, I was shaken, but also, I mean, it wasn't like surprise, or it wasn't anything tragic, but she was such an important person in my life. And even towards the end, we used to talk every day on the phone, right? Not about much, but, we kept that connection. So when I got the news, I was a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, right? And so I had this long flight, 5 hours, then get to the airport, I had to get a cab all the way to the hall, social hall of a church where the wake was. It was a long period. So what did I do? I was a Buddhist. So I thought, I need to accumulate merits. I need to practice for my grandmother. I need to save my grandmother, right? Because I know I'm a Buddhist, right? And I know how this works. And so all the way on the long flight, I am reciting mantra. I'm reciting, right? Buddhist prayers. For all this time, accumulating. Then on the taxi, I'm almost there. And then when I walk into the hall, it's a very unique experience. I arrive and I see her. And I don't mean this literally, but people talk about this when they encounter a body. Her face is glowing. There's a sense of deep peace. And I was like, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to save her. She is saving me. She's the one who has done so much for me. And it was another moment that derailed me. It was another moment that took me out of my bubble. And I was like, wow. So that was maybe one of the first hints of other power, in the sense of, this might not work the way I think. I don't know, maybe this is a good point if you want to say something or you want to share any thoughts, any comments.
So far, what you've done is, including the funeral with your grandmother, it's a self-power story or self-power basis, right? We haven't gotten to the other power or the power beyond the self, right? So it's within that context that you make these conclusions, or your experience is based on. Is that correct?
Which conclusion, sorry?
Well, your journey up to this, including your grandmother's funeral, there's this idea of self-practice.
Correct, yeah.
And I guess we go through that. I mean, at some point in our lives, we do that, but essentially for most of us, until we're about 50 years old, we don't think that we suffer. We think that we have our lives in the palm of our hand, so it is much later that one appreciates as you said, all the relationships of interdependence and all of those kinds of stuff. So thank you for your story.
Thank you. Maybe I should come back in 10 years when I'm 50. Yes, I mean, I'm talking about how I came to Jodo Shinshu, basically, but I'm not there yet. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say I enjoy this part of your story about how you come to Jodo Shinshu. Although you're really not like the majority of us, because at age 18, you're searching or thinking at a level. I was only concerned, I think, about high school sports or girls or something like that. But you clearly, had this predisposition to thinking about these things. I did want to say that when you mentioned the first encounter with Buddhism, maybe not your first, but reading the Four Noble Truths and closing the book, that I've heard that comment also from Professor Jeff Wilson, Reverend Dr. Jeff Wilson in Canada, because he teaches, I guess, young college students. And I remember at one of the seminars that he said, he doesn't, when people say, what is Buddhism? He never starts with the Four Noble Truths. Never starts with that. Starts with gratitude or joy or something else, but not with the Four Noble Truths. So just a good reminder. Thank you.
I was also concerned about sports and girls, clearly. Yeah. But there was something else stirring, right? Yeah. Do you want to have a break now? Shall I continue a little bit more? Any other? Yeah, I think we could take a break now. Yeah, that's good. So we're back in 10 minutes. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Shall we begin? Yeah. So there were some comments in the chat that, I'd like to say something briefly before I resume. Yes. I think anxiety is a very natural feeling as well, right? And I think teenagers suffer a lot, like we were saying. I think maybe when you're older, you look at them and you think like, oh, well, but those are not real problems, right? Because you have that perspective. And somebody much older than me now can see like, oh, well, he'll be all right. But it's all about perspective. And I think anxiety is very common. I mean, I was specifically talking about the anxiety of that was coming up as part of the Buddhist practice that I was doing at the time. But I think it's very normal, very natural to feel anxious in in the world that we live in. And yeah, I mean, it always feels like it's worse than ever, but I have a feeling it's always been a bit like this. This is the world of samsara, and there's always suffering, there's always instability, there's always troubles. And so perhaps it's good to also accept that anxiety and to embrace it, to hold it, rather than trying to get rid of it. Those are my thoughts on that. Right, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because there's a few things I wanted to share with you today, and probably not gonna cover everything, but that's okay. There's more for next time. There's more for social time afterwards, and yeah, I hope to meet you again anyway. So I kept on practicing Tibetan Buddhism. I was introduced to the Dzogchen practice, just doing silent meditation. A few people have asked me while in Hawaii whether I practice silent meditation, and I say no, I don't have anything against it, but I did a lot of it. So yes, I came to realize how hard it is. Right? So we were encouraged to count the hours that we were doing of silent practice, and it was more than 1,000 hours. I did many of those on retreat, where you'd like 10 hours a day, you sit in. And so you really get to see your own mind. You really get to see how it works. And so I had a feeling that the practice was not working, because the more I practiced, the more anxious I became, the more aware of my bonno, of my selfish desires. And so the practice was working, but was not working in the way I wanted it to work. It was not working in the way I expected it to work. Right? And so, yeah, also physically it became more and more challenging. So at some point I had to give it up. So also I got my PhD around that time, and I was thinking, I want to start my academic career, and I cannot carry on practicing like this. This is not doable. I had other worldly concerns, if you want, and that I wanted to explore. And I thought, if being a Buddhist involves doing this, I cannot do it. So I thought, I'm going to put Buddhism on the back burner. Maybe I can't do it, and that's okay. I'll just move on with other things. And somehow I couldn't do that. Again, is this experience of, oh, you have a plan, you think things are going to go a certain way, but they don't. And so any free time I had, I ended up reading about Buddhism, thinking about Buddhism. I'll be on a walk and I'm remembering a sutra, or I'm kind of paying attention to my breath. I'm doing something. So it's like, well, clearly I cannot let it go. Or it doesn't want to let me go. So I need to find another way. There must be another way of being Buddhist. And it was around that time that I traveled to Japan for the first time, and this was 2010, I think. And there were a few things, there were a few hints, and some of you have heard me talking about this before. But one of the first things that happened, I mean, I went to Japan for an academic conference. I was a Tibetan Buddhist at the time, but obviously I wanted to visit temples. I wanted to see a Buddhist country. So I went to Kyoto. I was based in Osaka. And I went to Kyoto, and the first thing that I encountered as I came out of Kyoto Station, I started walking down Karasumadori. I think my aim was to get to the Imperial Palace, to the Gosho. And I see on the left a banner that says, "Right now, life is living you." And that was a banner that was on Nishi Hongwanji for a number of years. And it just elicited my curiosity. I took a picture. I thought it was funny. But I also thought there was something deeper about it. And all of this happened in one day. And then I carried on walking, and I wanted a coffee at one point. I love coffee, and I've been enjoying Hawaiian coffee very much while I've been here. And in this coffee shop, there's a window. It's like a huge window that looks into a temple, a tiny temple that has been boxed in by all these high rises. was like, oh, that's interesting. So again, something unexpected. And so I decided, I'm going to check out this temple. And turns out it was Rokakudo, where Shinran had a very meaningful experience that determined the direction of his life. And so I went into Rokakudo, and I really loved the atmosphere there, with all the birds flying around. And so I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know anything, but I thought, oh, I want to find out about this place. I want to know more about this place. I want to come back here. This place, there's something about it. And also, the other thing about that trip in 2010 was the sense that I encountered, I was from a tradition where you had to be initiated to do certain things, right? You had to practice in a certain way. And I would be at a temple, and an Obachan kind of invites me to do Oshoko. And I don't speak a word of Japanese, and she's like, oh, please come, just do it like this. And it's like so warm, so gentle. And I was seeing people that I assumed were lay, people who had families, who had businesses to run, who had jobs, but they also had this very heartfelt devotion that I could see in the bodily movements, that I could see in the attitude. And so my question was being kind of answered. Is there another way? Maybe that's the direction. These people seem to be very genuinely Buddhist, but I assume they're not sitting for an hour every day. They're not doing like a month of retreat every year, but there is something there. So that was my first encounter with Jodo Shinshu in a way. And so I'm going to move on to this. So months after that first trip, I started reading about different forms of Japanese Buddhism. And so I had a prejudice against Pure Land Buddhism. I thought Pure Land Buddhism was very close to Christianity. And so I was not interested in it because of the language that was being used, right? And because of some of the texts I had read about that had this prejudice. It's like Pure Land Buddhism is not real Buddhism, right? And so on. However, I thought there's something that seems to be something about Pure Land, the Pure Land tradition that speaks to that devotion, that sense of connection that I experienced in Japan. And then by now I had learned that Rokakudo was that place, right, where Shinran was. And who's this Shinran person, right? So I encountered Al Bloom's self-study course on Shinran, and I started reading that. So I could do it on my own. And I started that with the very firm intention, I'm not going to become Jodo Shinshu. No. And halfway through reading the course, I found myself saying the numbers. And when I caught myself, I went like, oh no, there we go again, right? So it's this pattern again that happens. But of course, I accepted it. And then I wrote to Dr. Bloom, and we started corresponding for a number of years. And so when I was asked to do these lectures and these talks, as I said at the beginning, I like to be prompted. I like to know what you care about. So people send me a few ideas. And one of the things that, obviously it was very meaningful that I was coming to Hawaii. And I was going to, in a sense, meet Al Bloom finally. And so one of the questions that some of you posed to me was like, what was it about the writings of Dr. Bloom that attracted you? And I couldn't really find an answer. I went over the correspondence that we had. I reread it. I reread some of the books that I had. But it's not what he said. It's not about his approach, his writings. It was about who he was. And it was about our relationship. So it was about his deep care, his emotional intelligence, the way he handled my questions, the way he didn't provide the answers I was looking for. And yet he always affirmed me. He was always very gentle, made me feel very comfortable, never put any pressure on me, which made me commit, right? This is how some of us work. You tell me to do something, I probably won't do it. You tell me I don't have to do it, I might actually do it, right? The reverse psychology. But he also was presenting Jodo Shinshu in this very practical, existential dimension that really resonated with me. And I mean, and having tried the path of self-power, like when in Jodo Shinshu they were talking about self-power, that really resonated with my experience of doing a lot of practice, trying very hard, and so on. And so this encounter with Bloom Sensei, there was a deep, deep acceptance as well that he was pointing me towards. It's not just like he accepted me. He was pointing towards a deep acceptance where we were both embraced. So he was moving beyond that, oh, it's about me and him somehow. And so this is what I think is really interesting about his approach and about our relationship. Like with previous teachers I've had, there was like, I am empty. The teacher is full. I am foolish. The teacher is wise. I go to the teacher, I ask a question, I request something, I get the answer. And you say, oh, I have this problem. Okay, this is what you do. Okay, thank you. I go and do it. Right? That was the dynamic normally. Now, with Ali, it was very different because he always put himself at the same level as me. So I would come to him with a problem, and instead of saying, oh, this is how you should fix it, he would say, oh, me too. I have the same problem, right? And so he always liked to quote the chapter 9 of Tanisho, where Yuyen very bravely opens up about his lack of joy. And he says to Shinran, like, what's wrong with me? I say the Nembutsu, I don't feel joy. And Shinran could have said, you should do it more. You should practice more. Oh, this is how you do it. This is how you get to feel joy. Instead, Shinran says, I too have had this question. And Shinran takes that to make the point that because he acknowledges, because he realizes that he lacks that joy, that's why he is the more embraced by the vow. The vow is for him who is not able to feel that joy. But it's in that recognition, in that deep honesty of seeing his lack of joy, that he finds the key to his salvation, the key to his liberation. And this is Nishu Jinshin, right? So Bloom Sensei was always doing this kind of thing. So in our relationship, develop into this mutual trust, right? But not as like between me and him, as I was saying. He was always pointing towards something else. And even though we were really far away, like opposite ends of the world, I felt really close, and I felt his warmth, basically. So I have some quotes from our correspondence that I think are interesting, but I don't know if we want to dwell on this. Perhaps we can read this one. So, I mean, one of the first questions that I asked when I first came to understand a little bit about what Jodo Shinshu was about at an intellectual level. Oh, so, okay, Shinjin is very important. Oh, I get that. Okay. But how do I know if I have Shinjin? It's a question that a lot of people come up with, right? And it's a question that now is being asked to me as well. And so Al Bloom had this very skillful way of answering this question, and I'd like to read it. As to how we may know that we have all the power of faith, that is an important question, as the issue is a source of anxiety for many followers. Shinran is quite paradoxical. When we read Tanisho 9, the disciple Yuyen Bo is concerned that he does not want to go to the Pure Land quickly. Shinran says that he has had the same problem. Amida knew the strength of our passions and attachments and promised to save in spite of them. From this encounter, as I understand it, the deeper we are aware of our defilement or spiritual deficiencies, or the gap between our personal reality or evils, the more we can be assured that Amida has embraced us. The fact that you are concerned to gain that assurance means you already have it. You're aware of the difficulty to gain salvation by your own efforts, and that awareness indicates that Amida is working in your heart-mind and now already embraced or assured. What it all comes down to is that if the teaching continues to attract your interest and study of questions, then do not be concerned for assurance. You already have it. It is like where there is doubt, there is already faith. Now, mothers. So this is the way he answered. I was expecting, okay, these are the signs. Oh, yes, you have it. Oh, no, you still have to do this. It's like, he's picking apart the question. He's pointing in a completely different direction. And he's highlighting this relationality, right? This is the logic of all the power. And we'll talk about this in the next few days. As I understand it, the logic of self-power is a logic of opposition. This against that. This conquers that. This defeats that. The Buddha defeats Mara. We'll talk about that tomorrow. The logic of all the power is, it's not in spite of, it's precisely because. If I am aware of how self-centered I am, really, it's because there's a light shining on that darkness. You never see the light directly. You only know that it's there because of the shadow it casts, right? And because of that shadow, we know there is light. Right? And this is what Al is saying here, I believe. And it's this deep connection, deep relationality, deep interdependence. That is the essence of Tariki, of all the power. So I found his approach very, very inspiring. And so we were, already said some things about this. We communicated for 4 or 5 years. And towards the end, he kind of hinted that perhaps I would become ordained one day. And I remember when I read this, I was like, nope. Again, I don't want to do this. I entered this tradition because I didn't want to get into anything too committed, too intense, right? I had already done that. I want to remain a lay person. But very skillfully, he planted the seed. He never told me you should do this, right? So he said, when the conditions are right for you, you can decide to be ordained or even become a minister. Spiritual maturation is a personal process which you will observe yourself. And in this very gentle, this almost casual way, he's planting the thought. And so, around that time, I was being encouraged to do Tokudo, right? So not by Dr. Bloom, but by other people. And I had been in the Jodo Shinshu world maybe for like a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years. And he encouraged me to meet other people. I went to meetings. I went to California in 2015, met many other people. And so some of these people I was meeting, they started telling me, you should do this, really. You should do it. And I mean, people tried different approaches. Sometimes people try to praise you and say, oh, you'll be very good. It's like, okay. Or sometimes people try, like, oh no, like, it's really important that you do this. But I mean, my initial reaction was always, as whenever I was presented with an unexpected encounter with a crossroads, it's like, no, I don't want to do this. And then in the middle of this pressure somehow that I was feeling, I don't think that people were very well intended. I don't think people were meaning to put pressure on me, but I perceived it that way because of previous experiences I've had. Then another person that I deeply revere and I've learned a lot from is Arai Toshikazu Sensei, who's been here, I believe, as well. And I've spent a lot of time with him. And I mean, I've had the fortune to meet with him many, many times, traveled with him in Japan and in Europe. And so he was, again, same kind of approach, very different character from Dr. Bloom, Arai Sensei, but same kind of approach. He also planted the thought So he never said, oh, you should do Tokudo, nothing like that. But once we were like traveling in Kyoto and we passed Nishiyama Betsuin, and all he said is like, maybe one day you come here. And I said, okay, well, I don't know. Fine. I don't know where this place is. He just said that. But then he really helped me make that decision, right? Because in the winter, so this is just after Al Bloom had passed, in the winter of 2017, we were in Düsseldorf. And he came to teach the Honko seminar. And we went for dinner afterwards. Everybody else had left. It was just me and him. And so I was gathering the courage to ask him because I really respected him. I mean, I still do, but like, it's like, I'm going to ask him about Tokudo, but if he says, yes, you should do it. If he gives me the answer I don't expect, I don't know. But I said, like, Sensei, what do you think? What do you think about Tokudo? Do you think I should do it? And he gave me a great answer. He said, there is no obligation for you to do it. But if you are serious about the teaching, I think you should do it. So he completely removed what I was perceiving as external pressure. And he pointed it back at me. He said, like, this is for you. You should never do it because others are telling you to do it. You should do it as a commitment to this teaching if you deeply care about it. You don't have to do it. There is no obligation. And at that point, I decided to do it, right? So this is how I work. So these great teachers figured me out somehow, right? But I'm very thankful to Sensei for that. And so I want to tell you a bit about my Tokudo experience, but I don't know if before that you want to say something or any thoughts come to mind. Please, go ahead.
I wish, in the, let's see, from 1976, I started attending, across the street, University of Hawaii.
Right.
And I knew the Buddhist Center was in that house format, the old time. But I never had the curiosity, I guess, to find out more. But at the time, I did take a number of religion classes at UH. And I wish, my regret is, I took a lot of classes from Dr. Aoki, Mitsuo Aoki, and I really enjoyed that. I have no regrets about that, but I wish I had taken a class from Dr. Bloom. I knew he was a professor there, but I never had the curiosity to take a class from him. But in retrospect now, I wish I had. Because I didn't grow up a Buddhist, so
Right.
so I had no inclination to take a class from him. But again, so difficult it is. I wish I had. That's what I wanted to say that. And thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. But in a way, you met him, Now you are here. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment that Arai Sensei was very, very close to the Buddhist Study Center because he was doing his PhD work here. And I'm not exactly sure whether it was in Buddhism or just in philosophy. And he was always grateful to Hawaii Kyodan for the support that we gave him. And he would always be willing to come to speak, with us. And his version or his take on the Tanisho is something that I use as a reference also. So, and he married a girl from Hawaii. From Linda is someone from Waipahu or something like that. But yeah, he had a very close association with the BSC.
Thank you. Well, I'll tell you another story about Tokudo and the journey towards Tokudo. So after this conversation, I decided to embark on the journey, right? And by that time, Bloom Sensei had departed for the Pure Land. And it was 2019 was the year when my Tokudo, International Tokudo, was scheduled. And there's nobody here who did it with me, but I think there's people that you probably know. Nobody from Hawaii that time, I think, but quite a few people from the mainland. And And anyway, I started training, and I went to Berkeley to do the pre-trainings. And then one of the teachers that impressed me most was David Matsumoto Sensei, who I believe has also spoken here. And he was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And I had met him before, a few years, and he'd always treated me with so much kindness and so much respect. And at the same time has given me the teaching in a very sincere and direct way. And so just always remember this. He was one of my recommenders as well for Tokudo. So one of the lectures he gave us as we were preparing to go, he told us about his experience of Tokudo. And he encouraged us to keep a diary, to see what was going on in our hearts as we were going through the 11 days. But he said that during the Tokudo Shiki, the Tokudo ordination ceremony itself, he sat at the very back, and he really felt like he shouldn't be there. And he was really hoping that Gomonshu-sama would spare him, right? When you're waiting, to be touched on the head with a razor, right? And he was like, please, don't come. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. And so I thought that was interesting, right? I mean, that story, I took that story with me to Nishiyama Betsuin. I couldn't keep a diary. It was too busy. It was too busy for that, right? But I took the story with me, and I was wondering, I was kind of curious to see, because obviously he was planting a thought for us. It's like, oh, see if that happens to me. Now, my ordination retreat went fairly smoothly. I mean, I was mostly focused on helping some of the other candidates from the UK and the journey up to that point. I mean, there were maybe a couple of moments before going to Japan that I thought, I don't need to do this. Why am I doing this? But not a very strong sense. It was more like, oh, but I'm on the boat now. I'm going there. Fine. Okay. The retreat went very smoothly. It was tiring. It was intense. It was meaningful. And I was like, well, okay, maybe that was Matsumoto Sensei's experience. That wasn't mine. That's fine. Now, on the last day, I am a person who realizes things quite late, right? I live in denial for the longest time. I didn't realize what was happening. But after my head got shaped, then it started becoming real. And I really freaked out. All of this happened internally, right? None of this was verbalized. But in my head, I was thinking I had to escape at that point. And I even had like an action movie fantasy, like if I jump out of this window, land on this car, do a somersault, go over the wall in my robes, and then hit the ground running with my zori, with my sandals, and then just go. And then I thought, oh, but they have my passport. Oh, well, I can go to a consulate, get another passport. I need to get out of here now. I cannot do this. I'm not supposed to be here. So what Matsumoto Sensei said became true somehow. And then even on the way to Nishiyama Betsuin, I'm on the bus, with the kokue. If I remember correctly, we're wearing our kokue, and then we take it off. And you're completely dressed in robes. And I was thinking, the moment the bus opens, the moment they let me out, I'm in the center of Kyoto, I know where I am, I'm just going to start running in the opposite direction. And at that point, I was having these thoughts. I was having these thoughts constantly. I was very, very anxious. And it so happens that I was given a job in the Tokudo ceremony. I was the representative to receive the kigesa, the yellow kesa from the Gomonshu. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I passed it here, but not there. And so they had given me that job maybe because they thought I might run away otherwise. But I realized at that point, the last opportunity I had to run away, I thought, oh, if I run away now, I mean, I can get out of this. That's fine. I can live with that. That's not a problem. But I'm going to ruin the ceremony for everybody. And that I couldn't accept, that I couldn't do. So as I walked in, I was like, okay, I have to do this now. And it's not for me. So in a sense, the way I went into Tokudo was accepting, oh, it's not about what others want me to do. Do I really care? It's about me in a sense. And then the very last minute was, yeah, but it is in different sense, in a different sense, about all others. I'm not doing this for myself. Right? And at that point, I realized, okay, I go ahead. That's fine. And I was so happy afterwards, you know, like that. I remember that evening feeling so relieved, so happy that I had crossed that barrier, that boundary somehow. So again, it's the same pattern of initial rejection. You see something about yourself, right? And you appreciate that thing that has been shown about yourself. But all of these things, all of these encounters, all of these insights, if you want, are happening always in relation. What got me through, not running away, what got me through the end of Tokudo was my fellow candidates, right? It's because of them that I'm here. It's thanks to them that I managed to go this far. So it was a wonderful experience. And I told Matsumoto Sensei afterwards. But none of this, I mean, none of this came out in any way. This was all happening within me, right? But this was the kind of, yeah, the fantasy, the paranoia. And I've been quite happy since, I have to say. Then I decided to do the Kyoshi. That was not as eventful. It was demanding, but it was not as eventful. And yeah, I haven't regretted a single day of my life that decision. It's been one of the best things that has happened to me. And in a way, I feel like I didn't decide to do it. Well, it was one of those encounters that led me in this direction. So this story reminds me of this expression from one of the Wasan. So this in the Wasan on the Amida Sutra, Shinran Shonin uses the term sesshu, right? Which is what we normally translate as grasping or embracing. And then he explains what sesshu means. Some of these footnotes to the Wasan are some of the richest bits of it as well. It's not the Wasan itself. But Shinran Shonin writes, grasps, sesshu, so once grasped, one is never abandoned. Setsu, the first character, means to pursue and grasp the one who seeks to run away. Setsu means to take in. Shu means to receive and embrace. And I really came to appreciate this explanation in the context of that experience of Tokudo. Because it feels like throughout my life, what has been going on is like, no, I want to go this way. And then there's always something that, takes me by the hand very gently. It's just like, oh, maybe not. And I mean, this to pursue, to grasp is a kind of language that perhaps sounds a bit forceful. But in my experience of savoring this, this embrace, this grasp, is something very gentle. It's something very compassionate, right? It's something deeply, deeply soft, but deeply persuasive at the same time. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up around here. I wanted to share with you a couple more things, but I mean, maybe this is a good point as well to hear from you if you want to ask something or comment on something.
I want to tell you my
please.
Tokudo experience.
Absolutely.
At the ceremony, the Kamisori ceremony, I just burst out crying. I was sobbing, just spontaneous. Everything just, tears just kept pouring out. And I was sobbing, like somebody had died or something. But it was in gratitude. I felt so arigatai that I had experienced that, the session and everything.
Thank you. What are the chances again? That kind of feeling, yeah. Yeah, please.
I have kind of a silly question,
Oh,
but did you ever find out why your grandfather had books on Buddhism in the house? Was he a seeker? Was he devoted to Christianity?
It's not a silly question at all. I think he was, I don't know, I never met him, but from what I know, he had interests, he had curiosity, right? More than a lot of the people where I come from at that time had. So yeah, I think he went to church. I don't know how devout he was. In our culture, it's mostly the women who are devout. So men have this thing, we don't go to church kind of thing, right? So I don't know if he did go. I know my granny did. My granny was very devout, his wife, who's the granny who passed away that I talked about earlier, right? He also had Buddha statues in the house. So there was something clearly. There was a kind of curiosity at whatever level. So in the Canary Islands, it's very diverse, it's very mixed. Some of the mix goes back a few centuries, but they're also like more recent communities who have settled there, and there's a community from India. And so they had, Hindu and Buddhist articles, statues and stuff, so they had them around. So he acquired some Buddha statues. And so one of the things I remember as a kid is asking one of my aunts, his daughters, is the Buddha a man or a god? Because I couldn't quite picture, but that question only came up because I saw something that people refer to as Buddha. And then he had these books about all religions. It wasn't just about Buddhism, right? Books in Spanish about different religions. So he had a curiosity. He wanted to know more about. He's somebody who didn't have the chance to travel. I don't know if he ever left the island, maybe a couple of times. This is how he was. He was a baker. He was a very humble man. He knew how to read, but he wasn't like educated. Didn't go to university or anything like that. So yeah, he had a stirring, I guess, a curiosity. I speculate about it. I fantasize about it. Makes good material for imagination, for Dharma talks. But the honest answer is I do not know. But there was something there, and somehow he was one of the conditions for me to encounter the Dharma. And the fact that I carry his name, Enrique, right? So that's a kind of interesting thing as well. When you think about how some Japanese people talk about names and vows, right? A name is a vow, is a wish for you. Because my grandmother didn't have a son, and she always saw me as a son. Towards the end of her life, she always referred to me as, oh, your sister. Your sister is my aunt or my mother, right? So she saw me in that generation. So yeah, there's something there. But a lot of these things are like fushigi. They're kind of mysterious. They're kind of, yeah. So I'm very thankful to him. Yeah.
I have one more curiosity.
Hey.
So, how does your family react to your chosen path?
Like me. At first, they were against it, and then they accepted it. I'm mindful this is going on YouTube, so they might watch it. I can talk to you later. No, they're very happy. They're very happy about it now. But at first there was resistance, yeah. Not so much on religious grounds, but it's something unfamiliar. So I think they were scared, which is very understandable. Yeah. So what is this Buddhism? We don't know, But I think by the time I became a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, I've been a Buddhist for 8 years, 9 years, and by that time it was like, fine, yeah. And I think when I stopped doing long retreats and all of that, they also found it like, oh yeah, it's become more normal now. This kind of Buddhism feels more like, yeah, for normal people somehow. But when I decided to become ordained and everything, it's like, yeah, my mother actually framed a picture of me in robes. So, yeah. No interest whatsoever, but very comfortable and accepting about it. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah, I just want to thank you. You know, when you showed us the 3 slides of the Jodo-san, how difficult it is to hear, or how to be born and then to hear, and then to truly accept, So I want to thank you for showing us those 3, because we do hear about how difficult it is, but I think the 3rd slide, to me, kind of describes exactly where, like I am, in spite of going to many of these seminars, you don't know if you really, is it number 7 here is true. The most difficult, difficult to meet true teachers, difficult to hear, and yes, and the 3rd, and true and trusting of the universal vow. I just thought that's very meaningful for myself. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we will get into this primarily on Wednesday. Yeah, what the universal vow is, because the vow is also relation. Right. Please.
Are you influenced with the Higashi scholars? You know, who's a December fan guy?
Manshi Kiyozawa.
Manshi Kiyokawa and Akagarasu, and are you influenced by any of those writers, or including Kobosi and Chicago and?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I'm aware of them. I have read them. I have tried to read them in Japanese and failed because they're very complicated.
What about Haneda and?
I've met Haneda Sensei. Yeah, I cannot say I'm not influenced by them, because anything you've read, anything you've received somehow fits into you. But I would say my reference are more like on the Nishi side. I'm a Nishi Hongwanji person. Particularly Kakehashi Sensei at the minute, I'm really appreciating. Yeah, Kakehashi Sensei. Yeah. And I mean, the people I've mentioned, like Alfred Bloom Sensei and Arai Sensei, Matsumoto Sensei, of course. Yeah, so that's what I could say. Yeah. Okay. Well, I could maybe bring it to a close. I wanted to share a couple of concluding thoughts. I'm very happy to share this presentation with you later. So I'm kind of mixed thoughts about PowerPoint, because I think in a way it's distracting you, which is sometimes what I want to achieve. So you don't focus too much on me. But these are more like my notes. But yeah, I'm very happy to share this with you later. So yeah, as a reflection, I really recommend this talk by Professor Melissa Curley about the role of a teacher or the teacher in Jodo Shinshu and in Zen. And I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but I'll share the link with you and you can access it. And one of the points that she makes is that the teacher in Jodo Shinshu is meant to be transparent. It's like a window that enables the student to see past the teacher. So the teacher is never the object of reliance, unlike in other forms of Buddhism, but is a window through which we come to encounter Amida Buddha, the primal vow, the Pure Land, the 3 treasures. So it's almost like the teacher's role is to kind of get out of the way. There's a connection, but you're always pointing towards something else, right? And this was kind of the experience that I had with these teachers that I'm talking about. Through them, through relating to them, by encountering them, I came to see a bigger world, a bigger picture, a bigger shared space of trust that was not about me or the teacher, but that embraced us both at the same time. And so I think it's very important that we relate to another human being to awaken to this sense of trust. This is the paradox that on one hand it's not about that human being or about me, but without that relationship it's very hard to come to that acceptance, come to that realization. So in Jodo Shinshu, the teacher does not embody the qualities, but shares them with you, with me, enabling me to discover and appreciate them. And one way of very creatively looking at Shinjin, you know, like teasing this sense that I'm talking about, this meaning from the characters of Shinjin is this, well, if you break them down, it's person, word, heart. So Shin is, hito to kotoba, right? So it's like person and words. And then kokoro is heart. So it's a trusting heart, but you're not trusting in the person, you're trusting in the person's words, right? So it's something the person points towards. So the person is here, and the person is very important, but yet you're not trusting, it's not the focus, right? So it's through that person, somehow you access something else. And so I wanted to finish with this Wasan, again by Shinran. And this is Shinran talking about his teacher, where we can see this dynamic as well. And this is my translation. As for meeting a true teacher, it is among difficult things the most difficult. As for the cause of tossing and turning without limit, nothing surpasses the obstacle of doubt. And doubt, as I've been talking about, my understanding of doubt is this self-absorption, this bubble of self-centeredness. I want to do things my own way. I have my plan. I have my scheme. I practice, I attain, right? My self-centered faith, my self-centered conviction. This is doubt. This is the Gijo, in this case, Gijo no Sawari, the obstacle of doubt, right? But doubt is not disbelief or skepticism. I think in the English language, these are other things. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't know if I believe in the existence of Amida Buddha. It's like, I don't think that's what we are talking about, really. That comes from a different tradition. That comes from a different, that's a problem from a different place, right? And Alfred Bloom used to talk about healthy skepticism. He said Shinran Shonin had a kind of healthy skepticism. And I think that's quite different from what Shinran Shonin means by Gijo, by Giwaku, Gishin, Utagai, this sense of doubt, what we translate as doubt. There's no good word, I find, but the closest I can get to is this sense of self-centeredness, this sense of bubble in myself. So just to conclude, my initial reluctance, my doubt, is always seen through in relation to another. I come to see that doubt in myself when I meet another person who derails me. And then this person opens up a new space beyond this dualism of doubt and faith, which is what Dr. Bloom was talking about. And after I've come to realize how hard is it to step out of my own self-centered bubble and how I could never do it on my own. And in a sense, how I can never actually step out. That all of that happens in relation to somebody else. So at that point, there's nothing else to do but to put my hands together and say, Namandats, Namandats. Thank you very much. Namandats, Namandats. And so tomorrow, we will be exploring the story of Shakyamuni Buddha and how he was enabled to come out of his own bubble, come out of the castle, come out of his ascetic practices, come out of a lot of bubbles, thanks to many others. So I look forward to sharing this journey with you tomorrow again.